So I drove one lap and I pulled over to the side of the road before I did a second lap, and I said out loud to myself, now I know what I'm doing with the rest of my life.
Welcome again. We are here for another spotlight. And I think there is a situation, you told me, that apparently, because since I have been out of the channel for a while, I didn't know these things. When we bring an MX-5 for a spotlight, it's not a thing anymore.
Sergio, I can imagine Gabriele Piana at his house, somewhere in Switzerland, because he pretends that he's Italian, but he's not. Somewhere in Switzerland, fuming, like literally fuming, because it was last year, exactly this time.
But this channel has been
It's an MX-5 channel, I know. But it was last year, this time, that I brought him here to do this spotlight about team. Very cool spotlight. I think
go watch it.
One of the coolest ones we've done.
Yeah. Very cool guy, very cool car, fast lap.
And Gab could not have it. He kept asking me, but why we're doing another MX-5? And I think when he saw the finished item, I think he understood why we were doing this. And in this case, I guarantee you, when you finish this video, you're going to understand why we're presenting you a completely stock, simple MX-5.
Gab, we are not here to disappoint. Okay, so he's not going to watch this.
He's not going to watch this video. Anyway, point in hand.
Guys you are not Gabriele Piana, stay. Even if it's another MX-5, you will like the story.
Point in hand. How we arrived here?
We arrived here
cool
because I told you to come out of the building with your cameras and film this guy.
So Sergio, he would very rarely tell you, listen, this has to be filmed. So the moment he told me, you have to bring your cameras and we have to do this, I knew that was something special. I arrived here, I saw the car, it was a clean one, but I didn't really understand why we have to do this. And then I spoke with the guy and then everything became clear.
Exactly.
And it's a fantastic story.
It's a fantastic story.
This video is not about the car, it's about Matthew. And Sergio is going to give you a very small description, but Matthew himself is going to
Just a small brief. Matthew contacted us via email a couple of years ago to ask a couple of ring-related questions. It turns out that he's visiting since 1996. He has done 9 times the 24 hours of the Nürburgring, and he has an MX-5 stored in Europe, because he is American. I don't know if I mentioned this. He has an MX-5 stored in Europe for years, and he's visiting year after year. He didn't come right after the pandemic, but in 2022 he visited, and of course he stopped by. And the moment, I spent 3 minutes with him, and I said, this guy has to be in the channel, and Costas has to come with the camera and film it. Was it a good call?
Absolutely. And he says that story in detail. And the thing is that he's so humble. And even in our video, after I heard the story, in person, and then after we filmed the story, I realized there was even a little bit more. And then a few months after, there was this very cool article at Hagerty that shaped a few extra layers around this cool story. And he's a guy that has been coming for years, has thousands of laps. He has raced 24-hour races before that was cool. And there was this quote in this article.
Or when it was cool.
Exactly. And there was this quote in this article. I remember it to this day because I really connected with it. You know, he mentioned about doing his first 24-hour race being a very unique experience, and then coming again and trying to do it again and again, trying to relive that first time, the feelings of the first time. That is something that he didn't found in recent years. And then he stopped racing, but he's still in love with the ring. He's still in love with the place. He's a very, very mature guy.
Are you implying that the next time we are doing a 24-hour race with the banana, if this happens, we are not going to enjoy it as much?
Probably yes. I think, no, listen, let's be honest here. We have a very romantic, recollection of our experience at Ascari, which, by the way, both for you and for me, it was a very miserable one.
It was quite painful, but I would still do it again.
And of course, right now, I tell you, no matter what, I would do it. But I think we are trying to relive a little bit these years.
I understand.
They were cool years. In any case, a really fantastic guy. I cannot tell you how much Sergio was right in this case. He was 100% right. This is a one lap hero video, to the core. So if you think that this is a very simple car or a very slow lap or something that it's not of interest, I guarantee you that you are wrong.
Can I tell you something about the car?
Start to finish.
I actually find the car very interesting because if you are an MX-5 guy and you are a little bit of a geek of an MX-5, which I don't consider myself a geek of an MX-5, I still found it very interesting that the car is a real, genuine 1994 R-Package Miata. So let's say a limited edition for the US market only, with a couple of important key things, that all other MX-5s through the years added.
You're absolutely right.
The car is, I honestly have never seen such a clean R package Miata from 1994. They were done between 94 and 97, I believe. So it was very cool to see, because here we see like
used,
everything is modified, everything is turbo, on bigger brakes, on bigger wheels. So all of a sudden, to have a 65-year-old gentleman from the US coming with his original it looks not pristine, but indeed in way better condition than our cars, with all the items that make this car an R package, was super cool. So manual rack, manual windows, the front and rear splitter, the wing, the tie rods, the Bilstein suspension, everything was there.
Like a bit of a time capsule. So,
you know, our cars, my car was a 1991 base model with an open diff and like everything that
the non-desirable spec.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and this is actually the complete opposite. Is the desirable spec. And even today, like many cool track MX-5 builds, they run R package parts. I had the R package Lip in my car, a scheme as well.
Yeah,
we have R package tie rods and all these small things. Again, this is the thing, the same thing with Matthew. Like the first layer of his story sounds interesting, but then you look a bit deeper and it's more interesting, a little bit deeper and it's more interesting. And the same with the car. It looks like a clean black MX-5, and then you look a bit deeper.
We are talking about a guy that is walking the paddock during the 24-hour week, and there is this small banner that says driver wanted. He happens to have the money that they ask in one pocket, and he happens to have his racing license in the other pocket. And there he goes to drive the 24 hours.
And these times are long gone. And there comes what I mentioned earlier, you know, like about trying to relive this very cool atmosphere. I think in reality, we didn't even experience this. We were already here after that.
Actually, he says it, I think, if not, he has told me this information. He stopped racing because at some point it was clear that manufacturers were coming in full force with work cars, with official drivers and all the budget, etc. So costs skyrocketed. The grassroots experience was unfortunately diluted, and he said, no, it's time to stop. I continue driving on the public sessions and the occasional track day, having fun and keeping my budget together.
And that he did. And you're going to see now one of his laps, like 20 years after almost. Fucking cool stuff. Highly recommend you to watch the whole video. I know no catchy title in the top, not the fastest of anything, but I think it's a fitting video to be the last video of the year. This encompasses perfectly the whole One Lap Hero mantra, the mentality. It is what we are all about. So enjoy it.
100%.
And have a good year, a good 2023, no?
2023 is coming.
Oh, strong.
In full force.
The last time we said this, nothing happened. but maybe this time it does.
Maybe this time something does happen.
I'm Matthew McFadden, or Matt McFadden as I am known to most people, from Los Angeles, California. And this is my 1994 Mazda Miata R model. So this was an American market version of the MX-5. So that's what makes it a Miata. For a couple of years, in order to homologate it for club racing in the United States, they made a limited number of these R models that were decontented and a little bit more lightweight, but they also added some high performance stuff to it so that it would be advantageous on the racetrack. So the car comes with no armrests. It was originally built with no air conditioning system or no radio, but it does come with a nifty little R front spoiler, little rear spoiler, and a low valance. It also comes with a limited slip differential, which was not standard on the regular Miatas. I bought this car from the original owner. It was a friend of mine who had only driven it 11,000 miles. He bought it from a dealer, and he had them put the air conditioning and the radio in. So it has the comforts of a regular car with all the racing goodies that they did to it from the factory. I'm also not sure that by accident these cars didn't go through the big welding robots more than once, because I've driven quite a few MX-5s, and this R model seems a lot stiffer than the other ones I've driven. I even have a 97 back in the States that does not have the same sense of solidity that this car does. After I bought it, I did do a few minor modifications to it, for handling and braking performance. It's still the standard brakes, but I use a good half-race compound made by a company called Porterfield in Los Angeles. I have the R4S pads on it, and I put steel brake hoses on it. I also put on Eibach springs, which lowered it quite a bit, and different sway bars. I put a strut bar in the front, changed the spark plug wires. But other than that, it's still very standard. It's the original engine, 130 horsepower. I did nothing to the engine. Like I say, other than this, I'm still running the standard, the original 14-inch factory wheels with little 185, 60, 14, whatever brand seems to be available at the time. I just buy new ones. These are about worn out. These were Dunlops. I've got some Hankooks I'm going to put on in a couple of days. The car is so much fun to drive. It may not be the fastest car in the world, but even in its stock form, but particularly with the minor modifications I did, it just handles like a race car. I got into the possession of this car and started my interest in MX-5s and Miatas in general because of this place, because of the Nürburgring. Now I've been into motorsports, auto racing, whatever you want to call it, since I was a child in the 1960s. And I've passionately followed all forms of road racing and all these things, IndyCar, Formula One, sports cars, you name it. Like I say, I like anything where they turn both directions. So I always knew about the Nürburgring, but it wasn't until I was somewhat older and heard, probably in the 1990s, about the fact that you can come to the Nürburgring and do what is known as Touristenfahrten, which is where you can just pay a small amount of money and you can go out and drive around on this place. And I thought, well, that's something I want to do. So I planned this. Originally, it was going to be a very short trip just to come here and drive a few rounds and maybe literally turn around and go home. But then I had some free time and I had some money and I thought, well, if I'm going to go to Europe, I might as well make a whole trip out of it. So I wound up having this long trip where I came to the Nordschleife and then I went to the 24 Hours of Le Mans and I came back to the it was a whole thing in 1996. So that was the first year I came, and I rented a Ford Mondeo, a four-door with a hatchback out of Frankfurt Airport, front-wheel drive. And I came over here and I drove one lap, and I put that. One thing for those of you who know the place well, in 1996 when I drove my first lap, what is now known as the Zufahrt Nordschleife, the entrance area where you buy the tickets and go on the track, was not there. You used to enter up closer to the back end of the Grand Prix track at a place they call T13, and literally there was a man standing next to the road. His name was Reiner, as the case may be, and he had a change belt, and you would come up and you would give him the money and he would make change, and then he had like a pad of paper tickets that he would peel off and hand you. And then you could drive the entire lap. You could even drive the entire straightaway, which is something that I think a lot of the people who come now wish they had the opportunity to do. Anyway, so I drove one lap in that Mondeo, and I pulled over to the side of the road before I did a second lap, and I said out loud to myself, now I know what I'm doing with the rest of my life. And immediately, as I sat there, I started thinking, well, I don't want to have to come and rent a car all the time. It's expensive. What would be the car that would be inexpensive to purchase, inexpensive to own, would not need premium fuel, and would be reliable, and if it did break, the parts would be readily available, and within minutes, the only answer I could come up with was a Miata. And so that has led to now a 26-year odyssey, and there's so many stories I don't know where to begin and where to end. So I came in 96 with the rental car. I skipped 97, and I was in the process of buying this and modifying it. Shipped it over in 98, and the only summers I have missed since were 2020 and 2021 due to the COVID pandemic. Otherwise, this has been my regular summer vacation. And I was very fortunate for quite a few years that I could come for, well, 1 year I came for 5 weeks. 2 years I spent 7 weeks here, driving every day and driving around the beautiful Eifel Mountains and making friends and just enjoying everything about this experience, not only from a motorsport standpoint. Believe me, even if you have friends or family who have no desire to go on the track, they can come and just enjoy being here. It's fantastic. So I stuck with the Miata, and I've been keeping it with a friend of mine in England because that was the easiest way to do it, at least back then, and now that has become my habit, and I have a friend there now after 24 years who he takes care of my cars. And, you know, I suppose well, is fantasize the right word? I don't know. But I've certainly considered moving up to faster cars, and I have faster cars in Los Angeles that I either track or actually race because I do some active racing. But I've always thought to myself, why mess with this good thing here? Where does it stop? I mean, you can modify this car, you can get another car, and there's always going to be somebody that has the newer, better, faster, whatever. And this is such a pure driving experience, especially with the skinny street tires, and it has a manual transmission and no electronic anything. So for me, that is the joy of driving. And particularly at this racetrack, which is, you know, rich in so much history and it really is a driver's experience. At a certain point, it's not even about how fast you go, it's how well you drive it. Whether it's in an MX-5 or a GT3 RS Montai Racing. And I have had the opportunity to drive a GT3, a 996 GT3 Montai prepared here, and it was wonderful. But was it better? It was certainly faster, but you know, it has a roof for one thing. Half the fun of this is you put the roof down, you really feel like you're flying when you drive around this place. And amazingly enough, if you put the top up, the car is faster, but it's more fun with the top down, so I drive with the top down. I was also very lucky to make so many friends. Back in the old days when there were fewer cars and people here, oddly enough, that it was much easier then to meet people and to make friends. And I was here one time in 1996 on an afternoon where it was me and one other car. It was a guy from Prague with his sister in their diesel Opel Senator. And we chased each other around for a couple laps, and then the three of us went out to dinner. It was fantastic, and I've made so many friends all over the world in 26 years, many of which I'm still in touch with. Sadly, so few of them come here anymore. I don't really see a lot of the regulars. I did run into a man from Ireland the other day who remembered me before I remembered him, and he remembered me from like 25 years ago, or whenever it was. But through those friends, I did actually, it's a long, involved story that maybe we don't have to go in here, I did get the opportunity to race here quite a few times. So I've driven race cars, I've driven the 24-hour race here 9 times. I've done a few of the shorter, what are known as VLN races, and some other more amateur-like competitive events on the track. And I love that. And I would jump at the opportunity to do it again if I could afford it. But it still is not really necessarily better than just driving this or something like this. And I think you meet lots of people, and on this site you will see lots of other people who feel the same way, that it's about the tactile sensation of driving. It's about the joy of operating the machine. It's not as much just about pure speed or pure performance numbers, because a lot of people can get in a car that has, electronically controlled transmissions that will match your revs on the downshift, and it'll upshift in tenths of a second, and you have ABS brakes and you have sticky tires this wide. It takes away some of the interaction, and that's what I would miss. I think I've even thought at times, even recently, I almost bought a car over here thinking, oh, that would be a great new car for my Nürburgring experience. But then I come back with this and I think, no, nothing will ever satisfy me with the level of purity that this car does. And I hope, the way things go, I'm not a young man anymore, I'm not rich, but I hope that I can continue to afford to come and do this and continue to enjoy the experience not only of the car and the Nordschleife, but everything in the Eifel and all the fantastic people, as we were discussing earlier. It's amazing. You meet people from all over the world, but you are instantly connected because you have this shared passion. And I'm not even sure if maybe there are more words, but it is just this indescribable desire to experience this and to experience it in a certain way. And I'm so grateful that I have that, and I'm so grateful for everything that I have been able to enjoy by being here, and I hope I get to do it for a long time and for the rest of my life.